Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a science fiction horror film, Species, Part 3. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie resumes the time when lifeless Eve lies inside an ambulance. Unfortunately, the chopper loses track of the vehicle because the main driver, Dr. Abbott, detours from the road. Abbott wants to steal Eve's body so he can create the purest alien strain out of her DNA. However, his plan is disrupted when the co-driver orders him to stop the car because they're straying from the plan. Abbott then threatens the co-driver with a gun if he doesn't shut his mouth. Suddenly, the astronaut Patrick's half-breed son emerges behind and unexpectedly extends his juicy tongue, not to tongue massage, but to eliminate the co-driver. Abbott runs to the back, witnessing Eve come to life and give birth to an offspring. The half-breed once again attacks and strangles Eve to death, pushing Abbott to steal the fat baby and flee from the crime scene. The chopper eventually locates the ambulance, only to find Eve's body. A government agent orders a full autopsy on Eve and a manhunt for Abbott. Months later, Abbott returns to teaching at a university. He also keeps Eve's baby locked in the laboratory of his house basement to let her mature. Meanwhile, a graduating college student named Dean tours remarkable guests to the power plant facility, where the prototype fusion reactor is built to create limitless fusion energy out of a clean chemical reaction. Unfortunately, Dean can't demonstrate the reactor's potential since the department head, Dr. Turner, isn't around to activate the machine. Dean eventually ends the tour because his roommate and classmate, Hastings, motions to him it's time for class. Soon, Dean arrives at Abbott's class, who's discussing the existence of viruses. When the class finally ends, Dean and Hastings go out to the field. Just then, Turner approaches Dean to talk about something important. Meanwhile, Abbott stands near a public bulletin board and eavesdrops on Turner and Dean's conversation. Dean struggles to obtain results from his multiple projects in different programs, so the department gives two options to Dean. He must soon find an approved project overseen by a professor, otherwise, the department is going to forfeit his scholarship for the succeeding semesters. Abbott shortly goes home, but he becomes disappointed upon seeing his cat mauled to death by Eve's offspring. She's a little girl now, who's very hungry. Therefore, Abbott and the little girl feast on a lobster as a special request by her. Abbott instructs her to use silverware, but she only pushes them away and continues using her hands. When it's time for dessert, Abbott calls her by the name Sarah. Next, Abbott tucks Sarah to bed. He promises her that she can roam the house as long as she won't go outside. But she can't go out because she's a unique creature who carries a message that needs to be heard. Abbott yearns to know the purpose of why she's sent to Earth, so he takes care of her while waiting for the revelation to arrive. Meanwhile, the agent's fears grow after learning from the autopsy result that Eve gave birth before she died. So he needs to locate the offspring soon, before the situation escalates to another alien hunt. The following day, Abbott receives an unexpected visit from Patrick's grown half-breed son, who's apparently sick due to his swollen stomach. The half-breed needs to see Sarah, but Abbott can't tell him unless he states what for. Abbott withdraws blood from the half-breed to determine the cause of sickness. He learns it's from a simple pollen, but the reaction is too severe. He then tries to cure him, but things only worsen as the half-breed oozes acid from his enlarged pores, and then his abdomen erupts large tentacles. The half-breed dies, and Abbott deduces more half-breeds are coming to get his help. The next day, Abbott calls Dean to show the dead half-breed. While Dean examines the corpse, Abbott explains the man suffered from a flawed gene because he was an outcome of an unfortunate coupling of a human and alien, making him and any half-breed offspring defenseless against common diseases. Abbott then explains his plan to bioengineer a perfect and disease-resistant alien species. But first, they need to dissect the body, then strip out the disease-prone human DNA, and lastly, create a purer strain of alien nucleic acid. Meanwhile, Sarah undergoes the chrysalis stage to mature into an adult. Just then, Turner unexpectedly visits Abbott's house to investigate the lab in the basement, and he encounters Sarah standing naked before him. Sarah tempts Turner to mate, but she changes her mind midway. Her abrupt discontinuation provokes Turner. His hormone persistence forces her to transform into an alien form, and she kills him with her GPS tentacles to trace and pierce his forehead. Just then, Dean and Abbott arrive home and bring the half-breed's body into the house, where they discover the chrysalis shell in the living room. They search for Sarah all over the house, but only to find Turner's body. Abbott then searches Turner's body to steal his access key card and gives it to Dean. Dean wants to call the police, but Abbott convinces him that the police wouldn't believe an alien attacked Turner, and they would only suspect Dean in the end, since he was the last person whom Turner argued with before he died. Considering the risks, Dean eventually agrees to work together with Abbott as long as he gets shared credits for all the experiments they conduct. Next, Dean dumps Turner's body and his car into a nearby swamp lake. He then returns to the house, worrying about where Sarah might be. But Abbott is certain she's nearby, since they live near a university campus filled with hormone-rich men. At night, Sarah attends a college night out on campus, pushing away anyone who attempts to score on her. Afterward, she ends up meeting an old woman who offers to drive her home. During the trip, Sarah shouts to pull over at an intersection because she senses a half-breed is inside the approaching train. She exits the car to chase after the train, but she trips and the wheels sever her arm. The woman runs to Sarah in an attempt to help her, but upon seeing Sarah grow her arms back, she only drives away quickly. The next day, Sarah comes home and welcomes Dean with a tight grip on his neck. Dean explains he's not a threat, but rather a science partner of Abbott. Sarah eventually lets go of him, so Dean can meet Abbott in the laboratory. While Abbott dissects the body, he explains to Dean that Sarah is healthy because of her superior DNA. Afterward, Abbott briefs Dean on the overall information relating to their project. The first generation of alien species on Earth was bioengineered during the production of Project Athena. The first one was Syl, created with equal parts of human and alien DNA. The second one was Eve, the genetic duplicate of Syl. Their blood chemistry was toxic, which resulted in unpredictable behavior, aggressiveness, and disease-free, but they were slightly susceptible to hydrochloride solution. Next, the second generation of alien species is the half-breeds. They were only evolutionary mistakes, prone to disease and sickness conceived, simply due to the driven lust of the alien-infected astronaut father, Patrick. The third generation is Sarah, a product of Eve and Patrick, making her almost the purest alien species yet, even though she still contains small traces of human DNA. During discussion, Sarah sneaks behind them to tell them that she wants to go out. Abbott lets her go, since human genetics are far inferior to her pure alien strains, which means Sarah doesn't see humans as potential partners. They continue their study, and Dean reads the Project Athena documents. Dean mentions the scientists' mistakes in bioengineering alien species, and Abbott claims he doesn't want to repeat them all. Besides, Abbott plans to inject a half-breed DNA into Sarah's eggs and allow Sarah's human chromosome to temper the mixture. Meanwhile, Sarah meets the half-breed that she sensed from the train to attempt copulation earlier, but she abandons him after sensing he's dying. When Sarah goes home, Dean invites her to play chess. She surprisingly beats him even though it's her first time, because she learned all the moves after simply touching the chess manual. Afterward, Dean returns to his dorm room. Hastings informs him he found a mass email from a sexy woman named Amelia, who's searching for a biochemistry expert. Meanwhile, the mass email also attracts the government's attention. The agent immediately looks it up, and the system detects the terminology used in the email is similar to Project Athena. He instantly orders a thorough search for Amelia and her location. The next day in the lab, while Dean withdraws blood from Sarah, the half-breed from the train infiltrates the lab, mating with Sarah to cure his sickness. Fortunately, Abbott activates the hydrochloride gas spray installed in case of an alien invasion. Abbott then runs to safety, but Dean stays behind because he worries about Sarah. Abbott then explains that Sarah can't be impregnated because he already harvested her eggs on the first night of her maturity and keeps them inside a thermos for safekeeping. The gas soon weakens Sarah, allowing the half-breed to corner her. Fortunately, Dean interferes and attacks the half-breed, but the half-breed quickly grabs him by the ankle and bites his leg. Abbott is forced to help Dean, so he cuts the half-breed's head with a saw. Dean and Sarah escape the lab, but Abbott fails to flee as the half-breed lurches him onto the wall, killing him in the end. The half-breed eventually dies due to the gas, and Dean attempts to save Abbott. However, it's too late since Abbott's chest wound is deep. During Abbott's last breaths, he warns Dean about more half-breeds coming to obtain the eggs, and then his final request consists of creating a new generation of alien species without defects. Dean immediately goes upstairs to clean his bite wound. He warns Sarah that she's in danger, simply because the half-breeds need her eggs to live longer. But Dean doesn't want to fulfill Abbott's final request because it's too dangerous. At night, Dean burns Abbott's body in the swampy lake and shuts down Abbott's laboratory in the basement. He then follows Sarah into the campus, who attempts to mate with him, but he stops her, possibly because he is hormone frustrated. Dean shortly goes back to his dorm room. Just then, he's surprised to hear from Hastings that he stole his notes and has them sent to Amelia. He is enraged by what Hastings did because it only puts them more in danger. However, Hastings only sees notes as fictitious jokes and nothing more, and assumes Amelia is only crazy for taking interest in something fake, so he sends his address to Amelia. The following day, Amelia reveals herself to be real, but dying like the rest of the half-breeds. She visits Hastings in his dorm room to ask more about the experiment data he sent to her last time. Amelia appears to be sweet, but when Hastings clarifies the notes are just jokes, Amelia threatens him to do his job if he wants to live. Meanwhile, Dean is about to enter their dorm room, but he quickly hides in another room to escape from Amelia. Unfortunately, Amelia senses him fast enough to murder the woman in the hall. She stands outside the door where Dean hides, but she returns to Hastings' dorm room and kidnaps him after detecting Sarah's scent is nearby. Dean attempts to save Hastings, but he stops upon realizing that the agent is waiting for him outside campus. He proceeds to enter the car to officially meet the agent. The agent asks what the aliens want from them, and Dean guesses they need someone scientifically smart to bioengineer a new alien strain because the current half-breed generation is considered an endangered species. The agent then tells Dean they need to stop their plan to multiply and spread, so they go back to the dorm room and allow Dean to hack into Abbott's file to learn about the aliens' weaknesses. It turns out the hydrochloride gas can be used to weaken them, but not enough to kill them. Meanwhile, at Abbott's lab, Amelia impales her nail into Hastings to rush him to do his work. She goes upstairs to vomit as her skin rots and oozes liquids. When she returns to the lab, Sarah wants to quit, but Amelia convinces her that she's their only hope to survive. Hastings almost finishes the procedure that night. Once the half-breed DNA is injected into Sarah's egg, they will create a new generation of alien species and let it mature over time. However, Hastings fails to eject the DNA on time because Dean and the agent just throw the gas bomb into the lab to force the two aliens to exit the house. Hastings immediately escapes from the house with the DNA and Sarah's eggs and reunites with Dean and the agent outside the car. The three men drive to the power plant building, luring Amelia and Sarah to follow them. Afterward, Dean separates from the group to activate the reactor using Turner's key access card, whereas the agent and Hastings lure Sarah in the heights using her eggs. Dean activates the timer for the reactor to explode, and he shouts at the agent from the grounds to pass the eggs down to him. Hastings then throws to deliver the thermos to Dean. Dean enters the reactor's interior, luring Sarah and Amelia inside as part of the plan to trap them. Amelia begins to attack Dean and eventually obtains the thermos from him. Afterward, she begins performing a smelly workout with him, but the grounds tremble as the core is about to explode. In the control panel, Hastings and the agent worry about Dean, because if he doesn't close the shaft on time with the remote control, the whole facility will explode. Inside the reactor, Sarah fortunately helps Dean annihilate Amelia. Sarah throws Amelia to the core, but Amelia drags her along too as she drops into the core. Dean shouts as he watches a figure plummet into their hellish death. The core is ready to explode, and Dean closes the shaft on time. The explosion causes an earthquake, but everyone is safe and secure in the facility. Later, Hastings and Dean are resting in their dorm rooms as they watch the agent in the news accuse Turner of being involved in the explosion at the facility. 3 weeks later, Hastings discovers Sarah is still alive in Abbott's house because of Dean's help. Dean explains he saw Sarah clinging to her life after the explosion, so he saved her. He also created a new male alien species using the remaining half-breed DNA, but free from detrimental human strains this time. Dean then criticizes Abbott for relying on Sarah's egg because nothing can be made out of her own genetic material when it should be using another alien DNA with her eggs to create the new species. When the boy finally matured into an adult, he became Sarah's boyfriend. Afterward, Dean and Hastings send the alien couple on a journey. It turns out, Dean made the boyfriend sterile to prevent their species from multiplying. But Dean just created a male counterpart for Sarah, so she's not alone in life. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.